The Rothschilds, the richest family in the world. In addition to being one of the richest families in history, the Rothschild banking dynasty is the main wellspring of conspiracy theories. Unsurprisingly, the Rothschilds' enormous and enigmatic wealth has persisted for decades, making it difficult to distinguish between fact and fiction. To understand how this well-known Jewish family built one of the greatest fortunes in history during a period of widespread anti-Semitism, we're going back to their early years. The Rothschilds' beginnings. Our story starts in the Middle Ages. By the 10th century, Christianity had spread throughout the majority of Europe. Religion was always linked to political authority, which made not being a Christian extremely unfavorable. The Jews were arguably the greatest victims of these conditions. The Jews were dispersed across Europe and lacked a homeland to which they might return. The Holy Roman Empire, the enormous multi-ethnic state that included present-day Germany and its environs, was the destination of many of them. Regretfully, it was not pleased to host Jews like the rest of Europe. In numerous cities, Jews were compelled to dwell in specific neighborhoods, which are today known as ghettos. This was also true of Frankfurt. All of the city's Jews were forced to live in one small street outside the city walls, starting in 1462. The Judengasse, or Jewish Alley, is the name given to that street. It was also composed of many closely spaced dwellings. In the past, signs rather than numerals were used to identify the buildings. For instance, the House of the Ship might be one building, and the House of the Golden Stone another. One of the homes had a sign that read Rothschild in German, which means Red Shield. Additionally, the house's occupants had been known by the same name from at least 1528. The financial experts. The Rothschilds, like the majority of Jewish families at the time, worked in finance. You see, Christianity in medieval Europe prohibited anybody from making interest-bearing loans. Thus, the Jews were left to handle this otherwise lucrative industry. Generations of people handed down their experience with money lending, and, by extension, anything related to finance. The Rothschilds weren't an exception either. Collectible coin trade and currency exchange were their areas of expertise, and Mayer Rothschild was the greatest of them all. In 1763, he assumed the family business, and the richest members of the Holy Roman Empire were drawn to his vast coin collection. Crown Prince Wilhelm of Hesse was one of them. When the prince first met Mayer in 1769, he soon realized that he could be trusted with anything financial, not only valuable coins. In 1785, when Wilhelm Ix of Hesse came to power, he appointed Mayer as his Hofjew or court Jew to handle his money. Remember that this was a typical arrangement in Central Europe. Jews would handle the nobility's financial affairs in return for financial support, security, and occasionally even real noble titles. Mayer was in charge of collecting taxes on Wilhelm's property and was responsible for protecting his funds. In 1806, this effort got extremely challenging. Europe is destroyed by Napoleon. Napoleon's invasion of Hesse in that year forced Wilhelm into exile and jeopardized his fortune. However, Mayer was astute and prepared for Napoleon. Nathan Rothschild, one of his 5 sons, was dispatched to London in 1798 to launch a currency company akin to his father's. With this base in place, Mayer moved Wilhelm's riches to London with ease and lent them to the British monarchy. Wilhelm was essentially giving the British money to fight Napoleon so that he might regain his position of authority. Now Nathan inherited Wilhelm's wealth and the Rothschild inheritance after Mayer passed away in 1812. His oldest brother took over the original Frankfurt business, but he stayed in London. The 3 surviving brothers, meanwhile, dispersed across Europe, opening offices in significant European cities. For instance, the brother in Vienna would lend money to Francis II, the final Holy Roman Emperor, while the brother in France became the banker of Leopold I of Belgium. He would ultimately elevate the Rothschilds to nobility in 1818 by bestowing the noble title of Baron upon all 5 brothers. Over the ensuing decades, the Rothschilds were the first to offer loans whenever a European government fell and was replaced. The International Monetary Fund now offers the same service that the 5 Rothschild banking houses did in the past. They made a lot of money by lending to governments and stabilizing key currencies. Naturally, in addition to their government loans, the 5 branches made numerous private investments during the 19th century. They acquired one of France's most important wine properties in 1868. They purchased a minority interest in Egypt's Suez Canal in 1875. The Rockefeller monopoly in America was challenged in 1883 when they provided funding for the construction of the first significant oil well in the Old World. They also acquired a majority stake in Rio Tinto, one of the biggest mining firms in the world, and De Beers diamond monopoly. The Rothschilds' slowness. However, the younger members of the 5 Rothschild families made fewer and fewer profitable decisions throughout the 20th century. When the final male heir passed away in 1900 without producing any offspring, the Naples branch truly went extinct, leaving his fortune to the Paris branch. The branch in Germany met a quite humorous end. 11 daughters and no boys were born to the 2 Rothschild heirs there, dividing the wealth and weakening its influence. Before Hitler's rise to power, the Rothschild branch in Austria was prospering. The Rothschilds were forced to sell their banking business for a small portion of its actual value after Nazi Germany seized Austria in 1938. With whatever liquid assets they had, the majority of them managed to flee. On his way out, however, at least one was apprehended. In actuality, he wasn't freed until he paid $21 million, the biggest ransom ever at the time. The Austrian Rothschilds were essentially forced into bankruptcy by the ransom, and the Nazis took all of their properties, companies, and artwork. The Paris branch experienced the same fate a few years later. Hitler and Hermann Göring personally visited the place to view their collections and select their favorites because they were so beautiful. Furthermore, the great majority of them were never given back. The French socialists nationalized the Rothschilds Bank in 1981, although they had considerable success reviving their companies following the war. Only the English branch ultimately made it through the 20th century unscathed. Sir Evelyn Rothschild, who continues to serve as Queen Elizabeth's financial advisor, was its patriarch in the latter half of the 20th century. After he retired from leadership in 2003, David Rothschild, a member of the Paris branch, took over as patriarch and combined the 2 branches into one. Keeping it a secret, he created an intricate web of shell corporations, beginning in Switzerland but terminating in God knows where, to guarantee the family's wealth would remain hidden. Even though the Rothschilds were one of the wealthiest families in the 19th century, they are now only a shell of their past splendor. The first Rothschild can be found at number 822 on Forbes' list of billionaires. The man in question is Jeff Rothschild, who is not related to the Rothschild banking family. In the same way that 2 individuals with the family name Goldman may not be connected, he has no blood tie. He simply shares the name. The fortune of the first real Rothschild on this list, who is ranked at number 1,284, is linked to an asset management firm that looks after the money of others. Ultimately, it appears that the once dominant Rothschild family is but a minor blip on the global wealth map. In all honesty, it makes sense. According to statistics, by the 3rd generation, 90% of affluent families had lost their assets. Having no regard for money and being born into wealth makes it difficult to be financially responsible. In conclusion, once a representation of enormous wealth and financial might, the Rothschild banking dynasty has a complicated past that is characterized by both resiliency and fall. The family began in the 16th century and overcame obstacles, including political unrest and anti-Semitism, to build a network of financial clout throughout Europe. Only the English branch remained largely intact, though, as their wealth and power significantly declined over the 20th century. Even the wealthiest families frequently find it difficult to preserve their assets across several generations, as evidenced by the Rothschilds' current lack of prominence. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Let us know what you think and what you'd like to see next. Your support helps the channel grow.